love her. Hear me, Pip. I adopted her to be loved. I bred her and educated her to be loved. I made her into what she is, that she might be loved.
It was with Miss Havisham's astonishing words to Pip that our last film ended. Hold those words in your mind for a moment. Now, one of the differences between a good novel and a poor one is that with the good novel, you can take a crucial episode, or even just a few crucial words, like Miss Havisham's, and place that episode against a larger, deeper background of thought. And with a poor novel, you can't do that. Let me show you what I mean. As you know, this film is part of a course in the humanities. The humanities deal with man's mind and heart as reflected over the last 3,000 years in many works of art and thought. One branch of the humanities is philosophy, and one of the subdivisions of philosophy is ethics, which examines man as a morally responsible being. Now, in the field of ethics, there was once a great German thinker named Immanuel Kant, and here is one of Kant's most famous sentences. Act in such a way that you treat humanity both in your own person and in the person of all others, never as a means only, but always equally as an end. Now, Dickens was no scholar. I doubt that he'd ever heard of Immanuel Kant. And yet they're connected. For that sentence, which means simply that a human being must be valued for himself, and not only because he is useful to us, that sentence is one of the keys to great expectations. Listen to Miss Havisham once more.
I bred her and educated her to be loved. I made her into what she is, that she should be loved.
Now, has Miss Havisham obeyed Kant's categorical imperative, as it's called, or has she disobeyed it? Let's look at a scene from the novel as we consider whether Miss Havisham has or has not obeyed Kant's rule. It's the scene in which Pip, after much has happened, returns to Miss Havisham's house and sees her and the house with different eyes. The rotted bride cake, the table laid long ago for the bridal breakfast, all seem changed. And in Miss Havisham herself, Pip finds the greatest change.
Is it real?
'Tis I. Pip. Mr. Jaggers gave me your note yesterday, and I wasted no time. Miss Havisham, please.
What have I done?
Miss Havisham. Miss Havisham. If you mean what have you done to injure me, let me answer. You have done very little. There have been sore mistakes. My life has been a blind and thankless one, and I want forgiveness and direction far too much to be bitter with you. And I should have loved Estella under any circumstances. Is she married?
Yes. What have I done? What have I done? Until you spoke to her the other day. Until I saw in you what I once felt myself. I didn't know what I'd done. Believe me, Pip. When she first came to me, I meant to save her from misery like my own. At first, I meant no more.
Well, I hope so.
As she grew, promised to be beautiful, I did worse. My teachings, my praises, my jewelry and this figure of myself always before her as a warning to give point to my lessons. I stole her heart away and put ice in its place.
What had Miss Havisham done with her praise and her teachings? She had used Estella, used her only as a means. She took an innocent child and used her as a tool, as a weapon in her battle of revenge against men. Even as a very young girl, Estella, who, by the way, is one of the few intelligent heroines in Dickens, had a sense of what was being done to her. Later, she even warned Pip against herself, but Pip, lost in his obsession, would not listen. And so unhappiness is in store for all three, Miss Havisham, Pip, Estella. Why? Think of that connection I said existed between Dickens and the philosopher Kant, whom he had never read. We've now placed one of the crucial episodes in the book against a larger body of thought. We see that Miss Havisham has disobeyed a rule which painfully, over thousands of years, mankind has discovered. And so the tragedy that Miss Havisham causes becomes a part of the tragedy inherent in our human weakness, in the general human condition. When you hear Miss Havisham's cry of agony, and feel it to be a cry that millions of human beings have uttered in their hearts, you're beginning to feel something of what a good novel can give you, besides an exciting story and interesting characters. And now I want you to note how cunning is the pattern Dickens constructs. For, parallel with the Miss Havisham-Estella relationship, which we've just begun to understand, runs the Magwitch-Pip relationship. Let's analyze that relationship more closely. In the next scene we shall see Pip is 23 years old, and not another word has he had to enlighten him about his great expectations. Sooner or later, he feels, Miss Havisham will reveal herself as his benefactor. But meanwhile, he has been living the life of a gentleman in London, where all alone, on a dark, stormy night, he's about to receive an unexpected caller.
Someone down there, is there not?
Yes?
Which floor do you want?
The top. Mr. Pip.
That's my name. There's nothing the matter.
Nothing's the matter. Dear boy.
Pray, what is your business?
My business. Ah, yes. I'll explain my business by your leave.
Do you wish to come in?
Yes. I wish to come in, Master.
The stranger, of course, is Magwitch, the escaped convict. And Pip, although he cannot say why, recognizes him as though the wind and the rain had driven away the intervening years.
I hope you will not think that I spoke harshly to you just now. I had no intention of doing it, and I'm sorry for it if I did. I wish you well and happy.
Thank you. And you the same.
Well, how are you living?
Been a sheep farmer, stock breeder, other trades besides, away in the new world. Many 1,000 miles of stormy water off of this.
I hope you have done well.
I done wonderful well. I'm famous for it.
I'm glad to hear it.
I hope to hear you say so, dear boy, but, you done well too, I think.
Yes. Yes, I have.
May I make so bold as to ask? You've done well since you and I was out on them lonely, shivering marshes?
How? I've been chosen to succeed to some property.
Might a mere warmint ask, what property?
I don't know.
Might a mere warmint ask, whose property?
I don't know.
Could I make a guess now? As to your income since you come of age? As to the first figure, would it be 5? Concerning a guardian, there ought to have been a guardian or such like whilst you were still a minor. Some lawyer, maybe. As to the first letter of that lawyer's name, would it be J for Jaggers?
No.
Yes, Pip, dear boy. I made a gentleman on you. It's me what done it. I swore that time, sure as ever I earned a guinea, that guinea should be yours. I swore afterwards that if ever I speculated and got rich, you should get rich. I lived rough, that you might live smooth. I worked hard, that you might be above work. What odds, dear boy? Do I say it for you for to feel a obligation? Not a bit of it. I say it for you for to feel that that here hunted, dunghill dog what you kept life in got his head high enough for to make a gentleman. And Pip, you're him. Here, look here. There's something worth spending in that here book. Here. It's yourn. Ah, don't be afeard on it. There's plenty more where that come from. I come from the old country for to see my gentleman spend his money like a gentleman. Blast you all! Blast you all, from the judge in his wig to the colonists on their blood horses, flinging up the dust around me as I was walking. I made a better gentleman than the old kit on you put together.
Notice the my gentleman. Notice the blast you all. Magwitch has made an artificial creature out of Pip, just as Miss Havisham made an artificial creature out of Estella. And both artificial creatures are being used for purposes of revenge. The relationship can be expressed with a little elementary algebra. Here's a proportion. Miss Havisham is to Estella as Magwitch is to Pip. But all four, Miss Havisham, Estella, Magwitch, Pip, fail in their great expectations, the puppets as well as the puppet masters. In pain and terror, Miss Havisham is forced to face the evil she has accomplished. Magwitch fails in his chief end, which is to use Pip as a means of gratifying his own passions. Estella's life is blighted, for in the earlier and better version of the ending, she and Pip do not marry. And Pip, poor Pip, loses both the girl and the money. We often think of Dickens as a master of comedy. We often think of him as a rather sentimental optimist surrendering again and again to the happy ending. But that's only a half-truth. For we've seen that Great Expectations is, in the words of George Bernard Shaw, a profoundly sad book, a deeply disillusioned book. We've seen the prisons its characters make for themselves. We've seen the obsessions that mar their lives, the dream of gentlemanliness, the terrible lust to manipulate others. A profoundly sad book. And its sadness is reinforced and deepened by still another theme which plays through it and which plays through much of Victorian life. In our second film, I said that the successful Victorian often had a divided personality, symbolized in Stevenson's haunting story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dickens was aware of this split, not only because he was an observer of genius, but because he himself suffered from a deep division in his own soul. He was the greatest literary success in the world of his day, acclaimed, almost idolized. And he was a profoundly unhappy man. You'll discover why if you read any good biography of him. And now, With this in mind, let us see how in Great Expectations he develops a theme very close to his own heart, the theme of the double life. I said that this theme reinforced the sadness at the heart of the book, and oddly enough, I'll try to prove the point by having our players offer a comic scene between Pip, Wemmick, and Wemmick's father, the aged parent. Wemmick is Jagger's chief law clerk. A dry little man, he lives in Walworth, a London borough, in a queer little castle of a house with a moat and a drawbridge and queer little Gothic windows. And within the house, a very old man, clean, cheerful, comfortable, well cared for, but intensely deaf, Wemmick's father, the aged parent. A touching and delightful scene. And how different from Wemmick's corner in Jagger's dismal law office, stacked with dusty papers and dustier law books. Wemmick's house in Walworth, with his beloved aged parent, and Wemmick seated at his high desk in London. But what sort of man is he? Generous? Warm-hearted? Listen now to his reaction as Pip asks for advice about helping his friend, Herbert Pocket.
I want to ask your opinion. I am very desirous to serve a friend. This friend is trying to get on in commercial life, but has no money. Now, I want somehow to help him get on.
With money down?
With some money down and perhaps some anticipation of my expectations.
Mr. Pip, I should just like to run over with you on my fingers, if you please, the names of the various bridges up as high as Chelsea Reach. Now let me see. There's London, 1. Southwark, 2. Blackfriars, 3. Waterloo, 4. Westminster, 5. Vauxhall, 6. There are as many as 6, you see, to choose from.
I don't understand you.
Choose your bridge, Mr. Pip. Take a walk upon your bridge. And then pitch your money into the Thames over the centre arch of your bridge, and you know the end of it. Serve a friend with it, and you may know the end of it too. But it is a less pleasant and profitable end.
Oh, this is very discouraging.
Meant to be so.
And, that is your deliberate opinion, Mr. Wemmick?
That is my deliberate opinion. In this office.
Ah, but would that be your opinion at Walworth?
Mr. Pip, Walworth is one place. This office is another. Just as the aged is one person, and Mr. Jagger's another. They must never be confounded together. My Walworth sentiments must be taken at Walworth. None but my official sentiments must be taken in this office. I suppose you're engaged this evening.
No, I'm not.
Then perhaps you'd care to have dinner with us.
I should be delighted.
Good. Come then.
And so Wemmick, strictly in his private and personal capacity, as he emphasizes, takes Pip home with him to Walworth, where he seems to be an entirely different man.
Well then, aged parent, how am you?
All right, John. All right.
Here's Mr. Pip, aged parent.
And I wish you could hear his name.
Not away at him, Mr. Pip, that's what he likes. Not away at him, if you please, like winking.
You made acquaintance with my son, sir, at his office, I expect. I have heard that my son is a wonderful hand at his business, sir. Yes, so they tell me. His business is the law.
You're as proud of me as Punch, ain't you, Agent? There's a nod for you. And there's another.
If you're not too tired, Mr. Pip, and I know it's tiring to strangers, would you tip him again? You can't think how it pleases him.
Amusing? Touching? Yes, both. But sad, too. For Wemmick, superficially put in for comic relief, is also in a way a tragic figure. He has forced himself to live two lives. He has his Walworth sentiments and he has his official sentiments, and never the twain shall meet. Officially, he advises Pip not to help Herbert Pocket get on. In Walworth, he urges him to do so. Many Victorians had both Walworth and official sentiments, and perhaps many of us today aren't much different. But is Wemmick the only one in the book living a double life? How about Jaggers, that formidable realist, the cold, hard, relentless criminal lawyer? Ask yourself why he continually washes his hands once he's finished his sordid day's work. And Estella? Pip says of Estella that she speaks of herself as if she was someone else. And how about our hero, Pip himself? Early in the story, he and Biddy, Mrs. Joe's young nurse, are out together on the sunny marshes, but Pip's disposition and thoughts are far from sunny.
Biddy? I want to be a gentleman.
Well, I wouldn't if I was you. I don't think it would answer.
Biddy, I have particular reasons for wanting to be a gentleman.
You know best, Pip, but don't you think you're happier as you are?
Biddy, I'm not at all happy as I am. I'm disgusted with my calling and with my life. I've never taken to it ever since I was apprenticed. Oh, don't be absurd.
Was I absurd? I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean to be. I just want you to do well and be comfortable.
Well then, understand once and for all I never shall or can be comfortable or anything but miserable unless I can lead a very different sort of life from the life I lead now.
Unless I can lead a very different sort of life from the life I lead now. Do you remember the last verse of Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken? I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. At a crucial moment in his life, Pip stood where two roads diverged. He chose one of them, and it made all the difference. He might have chosen the simple life that Biddy and Joe stand for. He chose another, and the conflict between what he might have been and the fake gentleman that he became forced him to combine two personalities in himself. Only at the very end, after struggle and sorrow, does he come back to the first road. And strangely enough, the split in his personality is healed by his experience with a man whose money and whose obsession made that split possible. He learns through the criminal Magwitch. As Magwitch tells him the harrowing story of his life, he learns to pity.
In jail and out of jail, in jail and out of jail, in jail and out of jail. There, you've got it. That's my life pretty much, till such time as I was shipped off. I've been done everything to pretty well, except hanged. I've been carted here and carted there. Put out of this town and put out of that. Stuck in the stocks and whipped and worried and drove. I no more notion where I was born than you have, if so much. First time I become aware of myself was down in Essex, thieving turnips for a living. Someone had run away from me. A man. A tinker. He took the fire with him and left me very cold.
Someone had run away from me, a man, a tinker, and he took the fire with him and left me very cold. Pip, too, had lost the fire of Joe Gargery's forge that symbolized integrity. But through an understanding of what Magwitch had gone through, his horrible, lonely life, and yet a life that had a certain twisted nobility in it, Pip comes quite simply and literally to himself. How does he express this insight? In one of the great lines of the book, indeed its moral center, when he recognizes that the criminal Magwitch is superior to himself, he says in bitter self-reproach, "I only saw in him a better man than I had been to Joe." For in the end, Pip comes back to the one human being who represents not the double life, but the undivided heart, who always acts not out of repression but out of spontaneity, who lives in freedom because he has never enclosed himself in self-made prisons, who could not even pronounce the phrase categorical imperative, but who nevertheless acts always in accord with Kant's dictum, respecting all human beings less as means to an end than as ends in themselves. In this book about gentlemanliness and gentility, it is Joe Gargery who turns out to be the only gentleman. It is Joe who is gentle.
Pip? Is it Joe? Was it our old chap? Oh, Joe, you break my heart. Don't be so good to me. Which dear old Pip, old chap. You and me was ever friends. When you're well enough to go for a ride, what larks. How long, Joe? What you mean to say, Pip? How long have your illness lasted, old chap? Yes, Joe. 'Tis the end of May, Pip. Have you been here all the time, Joe? Pretty naughty, old chap. Joe? Yes, old chap. Have you heard who my patron was? Oh, I heard as it were not Miss Havisham, old chap. Did you hear who it was, Joe? Well, I heard as it were their convict, Pip, which we two seen together on the marshes when you was quite a child. So it was. Astonishing. Did you hear anything of his circumstances, Joe? Well, not particular, Pip. If you would like to hear, Joe... Now, looky here, old chap. Ever the best of friends, aren't us, Pip? Oh, very well, then. That's all right. That's agreed upon. But then why go into subjects which, as betwixt two such, must be forever unnecessary ones? There's subjects enough as betwixt two such, without unnecessary ones.
And with this scene between Joe and Pip, Great Expectations really ends. For Pip has finally come of age. He's grown up. He's passed from innocence through experience to self-understanding, to what Socrates meant when he said, "Know thyself." He has at last broken down the prison walls of false gentility, the walls behind which so many Victorians lived their lives. We've tried to show how in Pip's stumbling progress was mirrored much of the stupidity, the hypocrisy, and also the virtues of the Victorian age itself. We've said that Dickens attacked that age and that he reflected it. And I hope that in Great Expectations you can detect both his anger at and his affection for his own time and people. But if he had only recorded his age, he would not be as widely read and enjoyed as he is today. His finest works, of which Great Expectations is one, register the tension between Dickens' almost agonized awareness of his own time and his miraculous power of transcending it. For example, Magwitch is both a victim of the 19th century English penal system and a spokesman for all those who are cast out by society in any place, at any time. And Miss Havisham is both a symbol of Victorian repression and a terrible figure who lives in our imagination like some undying witch. And Pip, what shall we say of Pip? He's the type of all young men from the provinces and the small towns who come to the big city, eager, bewildered, confused, anxious to succeed, anxious to learn, misled by false ideals and values, winning through with much pain to a few true ones, trying, like all of us, to find out how to fit into society and at the same time to find himself. In these 4 films, I've tried to suggest to you that a novel can be more than a story to be read and forgotten. If it is a good novel, it can become part of your life. It can enlarge it, comment on it, ask it questions. When it does this, it belongs to the humanities.